Hello, viewers, and welcome to the latest episode of The Huddle. Tim Poole here, editor of Gambling Insider, and I'm with Sam Brown, CEO of Rootz. Sam, thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on. Always excited to talk to B2C operators. And nice, easy starter. Tell us all about Rootz, the history, and kind of the way you're looking to stand out with your USP.
So quick whistle-stop history. Company was founded in 2018 by some guys who were previously behind the brand, the casino brand Risk.com, which was then sold to GIG. Formed Rootz. Rootz launched its first B2C brand, Wilds, which is still our flagship brand, 2019, on a fully proprietary PAM and platform stack, which we'd been building in the year previous to lead up to the launch of the brand. And since then, we have launched a further 4 brands. We have got local licenses in Germany and Ontario on top of our MGA brands. We're still predominantly casino business, but we will, bit of a spoiler alert here, we will shortly be launching a sports business. We're hoping to see that go live some point in the third quarter or early fourth quarter. In terms of what makes us stand out, proprietary software, of course, being one, and then our kind of flagship USP is the company slogan that we use is automate the game, and so the platform that we built has focused on using technology to become more efficient and to solve problems rather than having large numbers of staff. So we take advantage of things like AI, but we also very early on built deeply automated customer journey tools, which do the lion's share of our life cycle and CRM management of players, and same with things like responsible gaming models, AML, source of wealth models. All of these things are data driven and automated so that we have less human requirement on those key elements of the business. So very, very short history and USP summary there.
Yeah, some really interesting topics. Some we'll definitely dive into in terms of the proprietary tech and the AI, and I suppose the emphasis on the less need for humans is always a little bit scary to hear. But obviously, I don't think we're quite at the stage of not needing humans at all. Just about making it a little bit more efficient, right? But before we dive into those topics, I wanted to a bit of a spoiler from me. Going to have a little cheesy pun here. Going to ask about your roots as opposed to the company's. But I know you've got a few years in the industry, kind of with bets and Hero Gaming and Betfair. I wanted to kind of ask really what you learned along the way before you got to this role.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked predominantly B2C. I did a couple of years at what was NetEnt, which is now, of course, part of Evolution Group. But I did a couple of years there B2B, which was a really good learning curve. But probably the biggest thing it taught me was that my passion is for the B2C business. I like the action. I like the chaos. And I think, probably, I mean, I've learned so many things along the way. I think I'm now in my 18th year in the industry. So it's one of the only things I know. And it's, kind of, I would say perhaps the biggest thing that you learn along the way is kind of not to take yourself or even your strategy too seriously, because things are so fluid in this industry that you just have to be able to adapt and kind of roll with the punches. Of course, you need strategic alignment to get you in focus, but you need to be prepared for, I think the old saying, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I think in our industry, get a lot of punches to the face on a very regular basis. So I think the biggest thing for me is, not taking yourself too seriously. Don't be too rigid and take strategy too seriously, because you need to understand that adaptability and your ability to move quickly and evolve is probably the biggest strength that you can carry through in the B2C side of the business in particular.
Oh, no, really interesting to hear that, because I think not necessarily every interview on the Huddle would necessarily say to not take yourself too seriously, and especially with the strategy point. But the adaptability makes a lot of sense, because the fluid nature of the industry is why a lot of execs love working in the industry. It's why I love being kind of editor of Gambling Insider. There's always something new, always something changing. I wanted to ask you a follow up on the proprietary tech point, because interesting kind of discussion point in general at the moment. A lot of third-party B2B suppliers emphasizing the need for kind of their expertise, and a lot of operators perhaps going the other way. I say a lot. I couldn't tell you exactly, the split, and that's what's quite interesting, who's going where. But I guess in short, a question for me is, what are the advantages of kind of having your own tech versus perhaps the cost of that?
Massively depends kind of what tech we are talking about. But I mean, the obvious advantages to having your own tech are, if you structure your business in such a way that your tech becomes your primary IP, and you can use that in a business to business sense, then you can very effectively realize the value of that tech when it comes to the residual value of the company in general. So technology and platforms carry good multiples compared to just gaming revenues and websites. So there's one very obvious advantage there in terms of overall the residual value of your entity, of your business, by owning the software. And then of course you have the ability to control your destiny somewhat. I think these days the industry's kind of matured in two different directions. So I think when you look at European businesses, so even European businesses that historically own their own technology, those companies are increasingly turning to niche third-party elements to improve their speed to market or their dynamism with certain new technologies. Whereas if you look at the US, and this is a very classic US strategy anyway, they're just more interested in owning the whole supply chain. So they just want everything, right? Or everything needs to belong to them or be controlled by them as an asset or as a piece of technology. So you see this kind of fairly obvious divergence in those people with the different strategies on proprietary tech. We of course do use third parties on top of our proprietary tech, especially in payments area, but also when it comes to, of course, the more sophisticated data and AI tools. We use third-party software. But the key question, and the question you should always ask yourself when embarking on a third party, if you own your own PAM, is am I devaluing my PAM by taking on a third party, or is it insignificant, or am I enhancing the value of my PAM? And so the kind of buy versus build in the long run always boils down to that element. So there are certain key pieces of technology which are unlikely to use third parties on. And then there are other areas where it makes complete sense to use third parties. I'll give you an example. In our business, we have a streaming casino. So would it add significant value to our casino platform to build our own streaming technology from zero? No. makes more sense to use a really well-defined Dolby technology, which scales well, is affordable, it's completely robust. These guys have been building it for years. So had it been the case that we felt we needed to own streaming technology to be valuable in the future, then of course we would have built it ourselves. But we decided against that because we see it as an addition to our technology, which isn't part of the key underpinning value of the platform itself.
Makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting to hear the kind of the case-by-case nature. As you say, in a full supply chain these days, yeah, probably no one has 100% proprietary. But as you say, I guess you're evaluating which parts to go proprietary and which parts to go third party. The AI, as you mentioned, the automate the game slogan or mantra, if you will, obviously that plays a big part. In terms of AI, you said it was kind of very important from the get-go. Is this something that you were perhaps doing, before it was cool? Because it's extremely topical now. It has been in gaming for a while, but I think it's never been quite front and center as it is in the conversation today.
I think so the answer is yes. We've been doing it in the background for a good amount of time when it comes to the use of machine learning and automation to improve processes, speed up processes. When it comes to what today's version, there's so many different definitions now of what artificial intelligence is and where you use it. And I think ChatGPT derailed the conversation somewhat because everybody thought, okay, well, AI is just ChatGPT, but of course it's not. It's a much deeper and broader topics. But yes, we've been using it for a while, and some examples are we use it to in various black boxes to manage customer life cycle. We use it to manage customer protection and responsible gaming, and to continuously develop and evolve our understanding of that topic and the tools that we use, and the messages and prompts that we use. And then at more basic level, we use it for we use an AI tool now for all of our invoicing. So invoicing is, you can essentially replace a couple of account executives by having a system which reads an invoice, understands where that invoice belongs in a cost center, understands whether it's in scope of that cost center, if not, seeks approval from that cost center, then lines up a payment to the bank, and then requires the human only to do a quick manual review and check before posting to the banks. And that's because we're only at the first step. Once we start to trust it more, we will allow an API to actually allow it have that AI interface with the bank and completely credit and solve. So the entire process from receiving of invoice to settling of invoice would require no human intervention from our side eventually. So that's just some small practical examples, but we have lots of them around the business, and we've been doing them and adding to them and refining them for several years now.
Do you think we get to a stage where a process like that and several processes like that are just completely fully automated? And if so, when? And I don't know if it's a bit one-dimensional of me to ask, and does that mean that effectively loads of people just end up losing their jobs?
No, so we're already there in a lot of processes where it can go ahead and do it. But I think that, we will always have somewhat a distrust, perhaps, or a fear of letting it go all the way from point A to point B. And when it comes to something very administrative, you could see that could happen in a fairly short period of time. When it comes to something like responsible gaming, there's of course human elements involved. You would not want a machine dealing with a topic as important as that. So we will always have requirement for humans to be able to interface with other humans and to be able to interpret so you can have bots and AI and things gathering all the right information, sending all the right triggers, putting all the right limits in place. But ultimately, it's a human topic, and that needs to be dealt with in a human way. So there's certainly administrative areas of any business where I would certainly hope we can become more efficient and in a short period of time going end to end. But is it going to fundamentally change the number of people in the workforce? Probably not for a good few years, I would say. And to be honest, every time, whenever we find one of these efficiencies, we tend not to result in a redundancy, rather that we just move someone into an area more complex or another challenge that we have. There'll always be a list of things we want to do that's much longer than the available resources. So I think you will, it's unlikely that you will see, I would say, workforce is getting smaller. I would say instead you'll see workforces achieving more with the numbers of people they have. So I don't think anyone in the industry needs to panic about some sudden sort of mass loss of jobs to the robots and to the machines, but I think instead should be seen positively, that they can be utilized to do the more menial and tasks where they're perfectly built for purpose, and then allow the humans to work on the other endless list of extra things that we want to add value to in the business.
Yeah, I think every company can relate to that kind of to-do list, and just the lack of time for kind of maybe planning and innovation. And before I do sound like someone who's like against AI, yeah, that's definitely a big positive in that, the kind of word menial and automated tasks can sort of be data gathering, that kind of thing, handled by AI, and leaves the humans free to think about the next few steps, which often we don't have time to do. You mentioned your brands earlier, a few of them and the kind of markets they're in. Wondered if you could give us kind of a detailed breakdown into which brands are in which markets and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, we have on our original license was the MGA license. On that MGA license, we have 4 global brands operating across the various jurisdictions, which I will talk about shortly. And then we have one very specific brand which uses the account to account or bank ID software. So it's a brand specifically designed for those bank ID markets. But the markets that we are active in from a kind of accepting play and making investments. In those MGA markets, we target the rest of Canada, outside Ontario. Within Ontario, we are locally licensed. Within Ontario, we have our 4 international brands. We don't have the pay and play brand because that technology is not yet functioning in the Ontario market. So our 4 global brands are also locally licensed in the Ontario market. Then we have the kind of other .com MGA market. So we working very well in New Zealand. This is a market that has started to introduce taxation, and we see that as being the first in a pathway towards regulation. And then we accept customers as well from Finland, and again a market that we see to be on the path to regulating. So our overall strategy is in the brands we have in markets that are either regulated or on the path to regulation in the coming years. And the final market we're in is Germany. We have a slots license in Germany. One of our brands is called Casino, a misspelling of casino. So we're that does not comply with German regulations as a URL. So unfortunately, that brand was not allowed in the German market. But our other three international brands, Wilds, Wheels, and Spins, all of those brands have .de domains and are operating in the regulated German market. So, yeah. Two locally regulated markets right now. Hopefully by 2027, that will be 4, maybe 5 regulated markets, and we will be almost completely regulated in terms of our revenue base by that point, by the end of 2026. If all the regulations go as planned, and Alberta comes, and various other things. So yeah.
Yeah, Alberta definitely one to watch at the moment. Wanted to ask you specifically about Germany, and it's always interesting to get the operator experience in Germany, because we have a regular contributor, Dr. Jörg Hoffman, gaming lawyer in Germany. Whenever I speak to him, it's just a very bleak picture in terms of regulations in Germany. And in the UK, for example, there's a discussion of if regulations are too harsh, there's a black market threat. In the UK, I guess the numbers are a lot smaller in terms of that threat, because there are so many regulated brands and it's established market. But in Germany, there really is a huge number of traffic that goes to the black market. Yeah, just wanted your thoughts really from whatever angle you'd like to come in from. But as an operator in Germany, what's it like at the moment?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough going. Let's start with the channelization discussion. I've been to Germany and spoken at the Gambling Congress about this. I showed statistics, real statistics. If you look at the way that they interpret the market, they are looking at traffic data. So how much traffic is going regulated versus unregulated, and based only on the traffic, they're saying that they have 70% channelized, or 70 to 80% channelized the casino market. This is so wildly stupid to me, because when you put these enormously harsh, and I can be transparent about this number, we lost 70% of the value of our business by following the rules. So by definition, even if they've channelized 70 to 80% of the customers, I believe that by absolute maximum, they've channelized 30% of the revenues. So for me, the biggest market in Germany is still the black market. They are making positive progress to address it, but the problem is, and then this is what regulators get wrong, the only way to truly combat a black market is to make it competitive for the licensed users, for the licensed operators. When it's uncompetitive because of rather sort of draconian and rule sets, or rule sets that have been designed by people that just fundamentally don't understand the industry and the dynamics and economics of the industry, this is the problem you'll have. In the UK, we had the luxury of many years of a more or less regulated market, and so I believe there was a strong understanding of the way gambling works, and the fact that it is this highly polarized market in terms of, if you compare your VIP algorithmic sports traders to guys buying lottery tickets, you cannot put everybody in the same bucket and expect that set of economic rules to prosper. It cannot cater for a whole market. It needs to be segmented, means tested, all the sensible things that that you need to do to regulate anything where there is a significant economic disparity or economic bias amongst the consumer base. So we understand, everybody understands the Germans didn't do a good job. Hopefully now they'll do something in the coming, months and years to improve things there, and give a model which is, better suited to making the good guys competitive. That's what we hope. And then there are just some really simple operational challenges there, like, and the rest of our business, we have 4,000 games available. All of these games have been rigorously tested in multiple jurisdictions for their randomness, reliability, stability, all the key things that make a product robust. But in Germany, they have to be individually tested one by one. And even if I have a game approved, operator B cannot have the same game approved. It has to be then manually tested and approved again. And so this has created this ridiculous operational backlog, and means that our game portfolio was until last week around 400 games, 400 or 500 games. The black market has 5,000 games. They have live casino, they have roulette, they have blackjack, and we have 500 slots, because they just don't have enough staff, enough capacity to manually test and push the games through. And so their solution was, well, we'll just get lots of students in to test more of the games. And again, it's the absolute opposite of automate the game or anything that's that's sensible in terms of scaling. You can't scale that that policy. You need to change the policy, and you need to understand that once a game has passed the rigor of testing, and again, it's just a fundamental misunderstanding of how the business and technology works. So I think what they thought was that we make our own games, and all the games I have are different to all the games that Tipico has, that's different to all the games Wonderino have. They're all the same games. They're coming from the same place, the same server, the same RGS. Why are they testing them 3 times, 4 times? So again, just a little bit of a frustrating, because it's just a lack of, I think, when they created that rule, they must have just not understood how the technology in our industry works. Because if they understood, like any of the other regulators, then they would say, okay, let's regulate the B2B guys, allow them to license a game, and then everybody in the market can access that game, and all of a sudden you have scale, and everybody, you've created a competitive environment when it comes to product. So yeah, it's tough. Like we believe in the German market. It's still a good market for us. We make profit in the market, which I think is rare amongst our competitors. And we've found a way to operate. We've found a way to make it work. But is it, does it give us wild upside? No, not really, until something changes. It's really just about grinding away, sticking it out, and hoping that that regulations can move in our favor, and that by adding more and more product. Last week we managed to get an additional 700 games through all at once, so at least now we have a good steady flow of product to market over the coming weeks and months. But yeah, something needs to change if they want to really shift the revenue channelization towards our business, which of course would be where we believe the upside to be in the future. So yeah, it is bleak, because there is no obvious path to this, to this dream state that we're all looking forward to. But we're still confident. We still have a good business. We believe in the market. We've got really strong brands and a strong position there. We've managed to, as we alluded to right at the very beginning, take the punch in the face, be agile, change the strategy, change the operating model, be a bit more ruthless, cut some costs, and find a position that financially makes sense for us. But is it a market that we're going to heavily invest to scale? Definitely not right now, not under these conditions.
Yeah, the toughest question, I guess, to answer, but is the obvious one for me to ask is, what needs to change, what can change to move this forward? Is it simply just regulators which they don't really tend to do, but just admitting that this approach was wrong, we need to change it. I mean, is that really the only thing that can change to really progress this in a quicker way than, several years of just putting regulated operators off?
Yeah, and you've got to remember that, like, when it comes, Germany has a very specific system. So first of all, 16 individual districts, provinces, counties, whatever, they all need to come together and agree for federal regulations to pass, or they have to be guided by one of the kind of lead districts. So things move slowly there, but yes, that is the solution. I mean, you know, to have these time limits, bet limits, and deposit limits so rigid, so that every single player must only play under those. I mean, how can you possibly channelize a whole market under one set of economic conditions? I mean, it's absolutely impossible. You can't do that in any industry. Like, it's completely stupid. So whenever you have any type of whenever you've got any type of limit on the free market play of a product, you're going to create a black market. It needs to open up, and they need to trust that their centralized tools, their centralized databases, which have been actually well designed to protect the players. They've got the national database, they've got national limit setting, but they need to let players change those limits and opt to play in upper limits and higher levels of stake. And again, this arbitrary 5 seconds between a spin. I mean, what's that? I don't really get that at all. I don't think that changes the way that people play, other than it's a bit frustratingly slow as an experience. So yeah, it does need to change. Will it change quickly? Probably not, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's often the case. Let's a final topic. Let's something a little bit more upbeat. You mentioned the new sports betting business earlier. Obviously, there's a how much detail you can go into. As you said, it was a bit of a spoiler. But maybe to precursor that, I wanted to ask a general question, which it might sound like I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I think it's potentially the opposite, in that I've seen loads of people with these two different things. Are margins higher in sports betting or in online casino? Because I always assumed or saw from certain data that online casino brings in more revenue and sports betting will probably have a bigger player base, but you're looking at smaller margins. But I've heard people say the opposite recently, so I don't know, maybe you can give me kind of what you found at Rootz.
Well, I mean, there's different ways you could answer that question. So margin, in terms of traditional margin, most sports books will operate these days with the exchanges and hedging and so on. Good sports book will operate in high single digits in terms of their margin, their overround, whereas casino games, depending on the markets you're in, you're probably going to be between 4.5% and 5% of in terms of your margin. The key difference is the number and available amount of game rounds, right? So you can play tons and tons and tons of casino game rounds. It's very, very difficult to replicate that number of transactions in a sports book unless you have some type of trading technology that you're using on an exchange. So if we talk purely about the margins, the margin itself, the margin to the player, towards the player, is higher on sports. However, the value of players is significantly higher in online casino than it is in sports, typically a factor of at least 3. But as you allude to, the scale of people that you can accept, sports is less of a taboo product, and it's something that people, especially in Europe, are much more familiar with and have grown up around, and so they feel much, very comfortable in the sports betting world. It's an easier product and a cheaper product to acquire a large customer base to. Then talk about the other type of margin. So the other type of margin is your operating margin, and this is where sports becomes more challenging, because obviously when you're talking about sports, the product itself, if you build it in-house, it's going to be very, very costly to build and to operate. So your business margin, your operating margin on sports would be significantly lower than it would be on the casino. And even the same if you use a third party, because typically sports books come at a significantly higher price as a product supply than a casino product does. Plus, there's more operational requirement for any B2C operator when it comes to sports. It'd be very risky to just take an off-the-shelf sports book and just allow it to run itself. You wouldn't be very successful, and you need more people overseeing how you manage the market, the over-rounds, manage your risk exposure, manage your free bets, all of these different types of things. So a bit of a convoluted answer, but towards the player, sports is higher margin. Towards the business, sports is lower margin. But you're correct in saying that the reach of sports from a customer perspective is exponentially wider than it is for online casinos.
No, thanks. I don't think it's convoluted. I think you broke it down really well. And to link it back to the kind of the sports betting business, I don't know if given you've given such a detailed breakdown there, kind of what kind of approach will you take, or is it all kind of under wraps for now until you make a formal announcement?
No, I can't. We will use a third party, and we have built a team in house here, around 10 guys who are guys and girls who are building everything up for a launch. We're doing, as we always do, we're doing something proprietary to the front end to make it an experience that we feel fits our brands better than just an off-the-shelf conventional sportsbook product. So something a little bit different. But again, I'll be very, very honest. We are not taking sports because we think we're going to be competitive as a sportsbook. We're taking sports for exactly what you described. It's about reach. It's about some share of wallet. But also what it means for us in the future is, being a casino-only business makes your world quite small. Adding sports from a geographical perspective gives you significantly more opportunities. So, of course, we'll have aspirations in the future to move into other regulated markets, but most of those that would be of interest to us, we have a much higher chance of penetration and success by having a sports product. So once we've had 6-12 months of operating the sports book, and anyone who's ever taken on a sports business knows the first 6 months are fairly brutal. That's when you get abused. It's when you get battered. It's when you learn the hard way from all the mistakes you make with risk and trading and free bets and sign-up bonuses and player management. So we're aware that we'll go for a tough 6 to 12 months, but once we feel that we've refined our sports operations, then of course we see it as a vehicle into new business as well.
I think that's a very valid point. An example I can mention is that BetMGM in the UK, and this is not to disparage them, they've done really well, but they learned the hard way in Cheltenham because they'd gone really big with some new customer offers, and on that first day the site went down, and even I as a player was kind of like, but yeah, as you say, everyone will go through that. Best of luck with that sports launch, and thank you for your time. We discussed a lot, and certainly some interesting topics and plenty that will probably come up again before we next speak. So thank you for your time, and best of luck with everything.
Thanks very much again for having me. Enjoyed it.
No problem. And to our viewers, thanks as always for watching.